welcome to Life Interrupted, our new segment, Remembering Remarkable Lives, with my co-podcaster, Vicky Skinner. How are you doing today, Vicky?
I am doing good. It's been a good day.
Good. And we are talking about people who passed away the month prior. So we are looking at people who passed away in November. And please remember, this show does talk about death and grief. And so it may have some triggering triggering emotions for you. So please be aware of that before you watch this podcast or listen to it on Spotify. Okay, we're ready to dive in. Boy, next month is going to be rough. We have had some people pass away. I mean, I was looking at the news yesterday, I think, and there was like 4 different actors that passed away. I was like, oh my goodness, this is nuts.
Yeah, that's what Jeremy said when I had mentioned it tonight. He was like, "Oh, next month you're gonna have a lot." I was like, "Yep,
Yes, we are. Okay, so let's get started. The first person I want to look at is Ralph Senensky. Was born May 1st, 1923, died November 1st, 2025. He was an American television director and screenwriter. He directed multiple episodes of dozens of TV shows from 1958 to 1988, including The Fugitive, Mission Impossible, 8 is Enough, The Courtship of Eddie's Father, Heart to Heart, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, Ironside, The Partridge Family, and The Waltons. And he died at the age of 102.
That's always exciting.
And what I love is that it's like a very wide range of types of shows, from sci-fi to drama to comedy. Heart to Heart was a comedy drama, kind of. They were a married couple that investigated murders and things like that. The Partridge Family, which was a musical TV show. The Twilight Zone, kind of suspense. The Courtship of Eddie's Father, which is kind of like a family show. So he did a lot of directing. Our next person is Diane Ladd. November 29th, 1935. She died November 3rd. She's an American actress. With a career spanning over 70 years, she appeared in over 200 films and television shows, receiving 3 Academy Award nominations for her roles in Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Wild at Heart, and Rambling Rose, the first of which won her a BAFTA award. She was also nominated for 3 Primetime Emmy Awards and 4 Golden Globe Awards, winning one for her role in the sitcom Alice, which is also the show that I can't remember the actress who played Flo that said, "Kiss my grits." She died about 2-3 months ago. I think one of the podcasts we did, and then Diane Ladd from that show. She was married to Bruce Dern from 1960 to 1969, which produced 2 children, one of which died at 18 months of a drowning accident, and then Laura Dern, her daughter. Yeah, I knew her father was Bruce Dern, but I didn't know who her mother was. And you can see the resemblance when you look at them. Okay, the next one is Dick Cheney. Born January 30th, 1941, died November 3rd. He was an American politician and businessman who served as the 46th Vice President of the United States from 2001 to 2009 under President George W. Bush. His tenure is often called the most powerful vice presidency in American history, with many pundits and historians even arguing that he was the first vice president to be more powerful than the president he served under. I have some history in here. A member of the Republican Party, Cheney previously served as White House Chief of Staff for President Gerald Ford, the U.S. Representative for Wyoming's at-large congressional district from 1979 to 1989, and as the 17th United States Secretary of Defense in the administration of President George H.W. Bush. He was also considered by many to be the architect of the Iraq War. I did find it interesting, so there had been some controversy over his draft deferments. He had 6 of them, and they each came at the end of a cause for the deferment. So Cheney testified during his confirmation hearings in 1989 that he received deferments to finish a college career that lasted 6 years rather than 4, owing to subpar academic performance and the need to work to pay for his education. Upon graduation, Cheney was eligible for the draft, but at the time, the Selective Service System was not inducting married men. On October 26, the draft expanded to include married men without children. Cheney's first child, Elizabeth, was born 9 months and 2 days later. Cheney's 5th and final deferment granted him 3A status, a hardship deferment, available to men with dependents. On January 30th, Cheney turned 26 and was no longer eligible for the draft. He supported same-sex marriage, as his daughter Mary Cheney is a lesbian, which put him at odds with President George W. Bush. He then supported Donald Trump until the January 6 United States Capitol attack. He endorsed Kamala Harris in the 2024 presidential election. And from 1995 to 2000, he was the CEO of Halliburton, a Fortune 500 company. He was also a member of the board of advisors of the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs before becoming vice president. On February 27th, 2007, at about 10 a.m., a suicide bomber killed 23 people and wounded 20 more outside Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan during a visit by Cheney. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack and declared that Cheney was its intended target. In August of 2011, Cheney published his memoir, In My Time, a personal and political memoir written with Liz Cheney. Cheney died in North Virginia on the evening of November 30th at the age of 84. He had been experiencing complications related to pneumonia and vascular disease.
What this taught me was that I did not realize that I had no idea what Cheney looked like until this moment. I don't know if I have ever seen a picture of him before.
Really?
Like, I'm like looking at this man going, I do not recognize this man.
Wow.
I know, it's such a like a totally random thing, but I mean, I've read so much about him in the news and whatnot, but I guess I didn't know what he looked like.
It's funny because although I don't agree with all his draft deferments, outside of George W., I find him to be the only other attractive politician that I've seen. Yeah, I know. And you're going, you find him attractive? I do find him attractive.
Okay. He looks like in The Office, I'm Gordon. That's what he looks like.
Ben Franklin?
Yeah, Ben Franklin. I don't know why, but he looks like an older version of him.
He does. So yeah, it's funny because I don't even remember. I'm sure that when he passed, we lowered the flags. I just don't remember.
But I remember, yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Okay. So our next person is Mary Ann Wilson. She was born May 15th and died May 15th, 1938, and died November 5th. She was an American nurse and television fitness instructor. Wilson was also the founder and host of the award-winning exercise show Sit and Be Fit. And I remember when this came out. It was broadcast on over 100 PBS television stations across the United States. In 1987, Wilson started the PBS show Sit and Be Fit, which includes a variety of exercises for the elderly and people with limited mobility. The show revolves around exercises that can be done while sitting in or using a chair with little effort. Wilson began her career as a registered nurse, specializing in geriatrics and post-polio rehabilitation. In 1985, while teaching an aerobics class, she noticed her older adult clients suffering a high incidence of injury and attrition. In response, she designed a gentle program tailored to their needs. Wilson died November 5th at the age of 87 in her home in Spokane, Washington. Yeah, like I said, I remember when that show came out. Or that Sit and Be Fit.
I think that's a very a very noble cause. It's one of those demographics that get forgotten about in something like the fitness world, and you go, oh well, exercising isn't for people in wheelchairs or older people or whatever. And it's like, these are people who have to worry about blood pressure. These are people who need to worry about their health and their fitness and whatnot. And so I think it's very impressive to see that, oh, well, here's a whole group of people who need something that I can offer. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, and when we don't continue to use our muscles, they atrophy and we get weaker. So being able to offer that to the elderly helps them to continue to be able to feed themselves and do things for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, sounds good. Our next person is Frederick Hamilton Rick Houck. He was born April 11th, 1941 and died on November 6th. He was captain in the United States Navy, fighter pilot, and NASA astronaut. He piloted Space Shuttle mission STS-7 and commanded STS-51A and STS-26. He was assistant Crimson Team Capcom for the first Space Shuttle mission re-entry. His first space flight was as pilot for STS-7, the seventh flight of the Space Shuttle, which launched from Kennedy Space Center, Florida, on June 18, 1983. The crew included Captain Robert Crippen, the spacecraft commander, and 3 mission specialists, John Fabian, Sally Ride, and Norm Thagard. Houck was spacecraft commander of Discovery on STS-26, the first flight to be flown after the Space Shuttle Challenger accident in 1986. The mission launched on September 29th in 1988. The flight crew included the pilot, Richard Covey, and 3 mission specialists, David Hilmers, Mike Lounge, and George Nelson. During the 4-day mission, the crew deployed the tracking and data relay satellite and operated 11 mid-deck experiments. Following command of the flight, Houck and the rest of the crew took time to honor those lost in Challenger. Houck offered words of honor to his fallen friends. He said, "Dear friends, we have resumed the journey that we promised to continue for you. Dear friends, your loss has meant that we could confidently begin anew. Dear friends, your spirit and your dreams are still alive in our heart." Discovery completed 64 orbits of the Earth before landing at Edwards Air Force Base, California on October 3rd. He published his memoir, To Mach 25 and Home, and he died November 6th at a retirement home in Maine at the age of 84. Yeah. I remember the Space Shuttle Challenger accident. I remember where I was working at the time when we heard the news of it happening. It's very devastating.
It's interesting because it was slightly off topic, but I actually looked it up while you were talking with it. So in my head, I know it's not true, but in my head, I always think that I was alive for the Challenger because I was alive, and now I can't remember. I literally just looked it up 10 seconds ago because I remember the Columbia. Do you remember when the Columbia exploded? I remember that so distinctly, and in my head, whenever someone says something about the Challenger, I'm like, is that the one that I saw? And then I'm like, no, I know, because that one was long before I was. But anyway, I'm sorry, I was looking up. But it's one of those things that we forget how often, because the Challenger was so, like, iconic, like this event, but it's far from the only ship that has exploded, either leaving or coming back, and so I think it's interesting.
Yes, and it happens, but they are few and far between. So when they do happen, it's like it's a major event, and you usually know where you were at the time that it happened. Yeah. The next person I want to talk about is Amber Mary Check. She was born July 11th in 2005 and died on November 11th. I have actually spoke about this woman several times since I've done this study because it has become such a big thing nowadays. But she was murdered at work. She worked at a blue collar job, and she was at her station when one of her coworkers got up and bludgeoned her to death with a sledgehammer. She worked at Advanced Process Technologies in Cato, Minnesota. Prosecutors in Wright County charged her coworker, 40-year-old David Bruce DeLong of Watkins, Minnesota, with second-degree intentional murder, alleging that he attacked her at her welding station inside the food processing equipment plant. The killing drew regional and national attention as an instance of workplace violence and prompted widespread discussion of safety and harassment facing women in the skilled trades. Czech's death resonated among women in construction and manufacturing trades across the United States. The National Association of Women in Construction scheduled an emergency virtual meeting after the killing, where hundreds of members shared experiences of gender-based harassment and concerns about safety. Tradeswomen and allies organized symbolic actions such as wearing blue to work, posting messages under the tag of a blue-collar sisterhood, and donating to the family's fundraising efforts. Advocacy groups and labor writers used the case to call for stronger workplace violence prevention measures, clearer reporting mechanisms for harassment and threats, and more robust safety standards for workers in manufacturing and construction. I've been talking to a guy online that lives in Kentucky. His name is James. And he sent me a message yesterday, and he is a forklift operator. And he said that he has to, of course, move these pallets. And he had asked a guy, they work in a giant warehouse, and there was a guy that brings the pallets to a certain point, and then James has to go pick them up and move them. And he asked the guy if he can move them closer so he won't have to drive as far, because the guy just drives them a little bit, and then James has to drive really far to get them. And he asked the guy, would you move the pallets closer so I can get them so I don't have to drive as far? And the guy looked at him and said, what? And he said, can you move the pallets closer so I don't have to drive as far? And the guy said, well, I didn't hear you the first time. And he said, well, if you would stay off of your phone, maybe you'd be able to hear me, because he said he was looking at his phone. And the guy met him out in the parking lot after work and threatened him. Mm-hmm. And he went to HR and reported it. But James also told me that the day before, he was walking through the warehouse, and he turned a corner, and there was a guy that had a girl on the ground, straddling her, holding her down. And as soon as he saw James, he hopped up and started saying, she hit me, she attacked me, blah, blah, blah. There had been a couple that had been dating, and he attacked her. And he lost his job, got fired, and I was like, that is just... And of course, when you work in that big of a place, there are a lot of places to hide and get away with things like that unless the whole place is monitored with security cameras. Which, that's what happened with Amber Check. They knew who it was because they saw him on the security camera attacking her.
Yeah, it's very common. It's one conversation that happens a lot on social media is like these men who are like, they're anti-feminist or whatever, and they go, oh, well, I don't believe in feminism because women don't want to do these jobs that men can and will do. And, the women are always like, we don't mind doing those jobs, but these companies cannot provide a safe workplace, so we're not going to do those jobs. It's not that we're not willing to do them, but these women that go into these factories and they have these jobs, I could never do them. Even if there are other women in the company, you're just such a minority that it's like, how can you ever feel safe? I can't, and it's not like working a retail job where there's customers in and out all the time. It's like you could be in a building where it's just you and your coworkers all day, every day, getting there when it's dark, leaving when it's dark, and it's like, no, that's no wonder no woman wants these jobs. Like, the pay is not going to be enough for the kind of risk that you take every single day going into your workplace.
Yeah. And
we want to pretend that stuff isn't happening, but it clearly still is right here in front of us. And just because some guy got angry, like, it's normal.
Yeah, the whole article, I read the whole incident of it, and he said that she had given him a dirty look, and he didn't like her, and he actually told one of his coworkers that he was planning on killing her. And he did. The other scary part about this is that this is coming to light now. But back when I was a kid, back when I was in high school and starting my jobs, it was, oh, you know, what were you wearing? Did you bring it upon yourself? Were you flirting with them? It was just assumed that it was the woman's fault. That's terrible. Poor, she was 20 years old. I know. This is her name, because of her last name. It's certainly not a name I'm going to ever forget. Okay, our next person is Sally Kirkland. Sally Kirkland Jr., which I've only known one other woman who was a junior, and that was Lucille Ball's daughter.
Oh.
Yeah, her name was Lucille Ball Jr. So she was born October 31st, 1941, and died on November 11th. She was an American actress and producer. She was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress miniseries or television film for her performance in the horror film The Haunted. She was also known for her roles in Best of the Best, JFK, and Bruce Almighty. She was a health activist whose work included advocacy for women harmed by breast implants. She founded the Kirkland Institute for Implant Survival Syndrome in August 1998. She was an ordained minister in the Church of Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness. She was a painter and a noted acting teacher whose students included Sandra Bullock, Barbra Streisand, Liza Minnelli, Dwight Yoakam, and Roseanne Barr. Kirkland later suffered from dementia. According to a fundraiser for her medical care, she had suffered a fall in October 2025, which resulted in injuries to her ribs and foot. She died in hospice care in Palm Springs, California, the following month on November 11th. She was 84 years old.
Well, did you look up The Haunted?
Mm-mm.
I went down a rabbit hole while you were talking, and I looked up The Haunted, which is a 1991 made-for-TV film, and it is about the Smile family, which is what the fourth Conjuring film is about, the Smile family.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it's on YouTube, so that seems like something I'm gonna watch.
Nice.
Really cool. He was very young in it.
Yeah, well, she was 50 when she did it. 1991. Yeah. So that is the end of our general people. So the person I want to highlight is Udo Kirsty. He is an actor born October 14th, 1944, and died November 23rd, known professionally as Udo Kier. He was a German actor, known primarily as a character actor who often portrayed eccentric and deviant figures. He appeared in more than 220 films in both leading and supporting roles throughout Europe and the Americas. He made his breakthrough playing title characters in the cult films Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula, both directed by Paul Morrissey, which established him as an icon of the horror film genre. He became a staple figure in both mainstream genre film and art house circles, described by one obituary as a cult icon. Kier was born in Cologne on October 14th. The hospital where he was born was destroyed by the Allies, in which Kier and his mother survived during World War II. Kier grew up without a father. In his youth, he was an altar boy and a chorister, and began working as a fashion model as a teenager. He cited Caterina Valente as an influence. At age 16, he met and befriended Rainier Werner Fassbinder, whom he would later work with on several films. At age 19, Kier moved to London to study acting in English and supported himself by working as a waiter. He also took spells in Cannes, where he befriended Jean Maurice and Arndt von Bohlen und Halbach, Rome, where he modeled, and New York City. His most famous Hollywood roles include his appearances as Ron Camp in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, Curly in Barbed Wire, a NASA flight psychologist in Armageddon, the villainous Lorenzini in The Adventures of Pinocchio and its 1999 sequel, The New Adventures of Pinocchio, and Ralphie in the film Johnny Mnemonic. In 1992, Kier appeared in photos in Madonna's controversial book Sex. He also appeared in the music videos for Madonna's songs Erotica and Deeper and Deeper, both taken from Madonna's 1992 album Erotica. Keir also appeared in the music videos for Korn's Make Me Bad and for Eve's and Gwen Stefani's Let Me Blow Your Mind. He also did some voiceovers in documentary. Keir was gay and open about his sexuality his entire life. In 2021, he said, "No one ever asked. Maybe it was obvious, but it didn't make any difference because all that mattered was the role I was playing. As long as I did a good job on the part, no one cared about my sexuality." He otherwise maintained privacy about his personal life, although stated in a 2022 interview that he'd been in a long-term relationship for over 20 years. At the time of his death, he was in a relationship with artist Delbert McBride. From 91 until his death, Keir resided in Palm Springs, California. He was invited into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in 2020. He died at Eisenhower Medical Center in Rancho Mirage, California, on November 23rd at the age of 81.
I didn't see it mentioned, but I think Jeremy would like me to mention that he was also Dragon Eddie in Blade.
Oh, really? I seem to
Yeah,
recall
because I
that.
when you sent me that that you were gonna do him, and I looked him up and I was like, oh yeah, I know his face really well. I just couldn't remember what I had seen him in, and so I googled it. And I was like, oh, Blade. And Jeremy's like, Blade. Because I don't know if you know that Jeremy loves Blade. He was in Blade. And he's like, oh my gosh, who was he? And I was like, Dragon Eddie. And he's like, oh yeah, Dragon Eddie. And like, okay. So, but then it wasn't mentioned. I'm getting a whole like watch list today because I looked up Flesh for Frankenstein. And I'm going to watch Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula, I think. Because I think that'll be really fun. I love old horror movies. I just think they're insane because they're always either a masterpiece or the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. And either way, I love it. So
Yes, and his face is very familiar.
the eyes. And it's funny because I showed him one of the pictures and he goes, oh, is that the guy from Yes Man? He was thinking of Terrence Stamp.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, they do kind of have, similar faces.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, because those big blue eyes.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's all I have. Okay, who's your highlight person?
I'm going to be talking about Fern Michaels. I've never actually read an excellent book. I forgot I meant to grab it since it's right here. But I was at the bookstore yesterday and they had one of her books on the clearance shelf. And so I decided to pick it up. So I know Fern Michaels. She's one of those, if you've been in publishing for a long time, if you've been a reader for a long time, like you've seen a Fern Michaels book, just because she's a staple um, of older literature that I think like 80s, 90s literature. And she did romance, but then she also did thrillers and stuff like that. So I've never read any of her books just because I'm not terribly big on things like thrillers. I'm really looking forward to that. Her real name was Mary Ruth Heaster. So she was a stay-at-home mom until her husband told her that it was time for her to get a job, and told her in not a very nice way that it was time for her to get a job. Um, and it's so interesting to me because you can tell that this is such a different time. Because so I was reading this on her website where she was the one that wrote it. And she's like, I decided that because I like to read, I'm going to be a writer because that seems like a good way to make money. And I'm like, in the year of our Lord 2025, no one says I'm going to become a writer because that seems like a good way to make money. So I just think that's a really interesting. Times were different back then. So she divorced that husband. He was apparently not a very nice man. And then in '93, when all of her kids had grown up, she moved to South Carolina. So she was from Pennsylvania, and then she bought a plantation house, and then discovered that it was haunted, which is actually super common. Like a lot of, I mean, because of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get into like everything, but places with a lot of ugly history tend to be the most haunted. And so that's why you hear about things like insane asylums being haunted. battlefields being haunted, and so plantations, because of all of the ugly, horrible things that tended to happen there, often had a lot of bad energy and ended up being haunted. So not surprising. She was inducted into the New Jersey Literary Hall of Fame in 1995, which I didn't even know was a thing, which I think is very cool. She published 161 books. I don't know if that was like a current count. So that was what was on her website, but I don't know if that, how often that had been updated. And so with her money, she created a scholarship foundation called the Fern Rogers Foundation. She was she seemed to be very big in like a philanthropist. So she opened preschools and daycare centers that were affordable to single moms who were struggling financially. She got into helping to pay to train like canine units, and she provided bulletproof vests for police dogs, which is really cool. Um, but she was 92 when she died on November 12th. Um, and she still has 9 expected releases coming up in 2026. Could be re-releases, you just never know. But looking at her, if this is kind of the standard size of one of her books, I mean, that's not to say that it's easy, but if she wrote smaller books, then it may be a little more understandable. And then also she had a Christmas novella called The Christmas Homecoming that was adapted into the Hallmark movie Unlocking Christmas. It was available on the Hallmark Channel. I looked it up because I was like, oh, that might be fun. Since it's Christmas time. Of course, I don't know. It won't be Christmas time by the time this podcast goes out, but you can still watch Unlocking Christmas. Um, so yeah, it's always so strange to me that, you hear about other celebrities passing away and you go, okay, well, human beings, that's what happens. There's, I don't know if it's because I'm a writer or just because of the nature of things that you kind of start to, so in other industries, as people get older, they tend to do less. So like singers, athletes, actors, they retire. They come out of, what they're doing. Writers tend to write until they die. And so it's a little, I don't want to say stressful, but just sort of like, oh, like that person is not gonna be creating anymore. Like that person, and so it kind of does something weird in my brain. And so someone who was as iconic as Shawn Michaels was, that it's it's just kind of broke my brain for a minute. So yeah.
So she had children?
Yes, I think it's had 4 children.
Okay.
I think they wrote
And none of them are writers?
it it didn't say in her biography that any of them, like it didn't name any of them. Oh, 5 children. Okay, and it says that none of them, to anyone's knowledge, were writers.
Wow. Yeah, I have in here that when she was a girl, her grandmother told her, when God gives good to you, you have to give back.
Yeah, and she did. I mean, it's very cool. A lot of those big name authors will start foundations for other writers because they understand that, writers don't have a lot of money. The one that always comes to mind is, I don't know if you knew this, but TCU, the Texas Christian University, Sandra Brown, who is another very iconic writer. She has her own like scholarship and program at TCU because she went to TCU. I hear about that a lot with writers. It's like the first thing they do. They're like, give the young writers money, give them some stability, so that they can eat while they're trying to become writers, which is very cool.
Yeah, which is is really good because it's really hard to dedicate yourself to your writing craft while you're trying to support yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I always found it, I don't know the word, where that when men are writers and they have families, they have their wives to take care of their kids. But when women are the writers of the family, it's really more difficult because they're still expected to take care of the kids.
On top of other things, I mean, I have a full-time job and then write part-time, but I have friends who have full-time jobs and have kids and still find time to write. And I'm like, I actually cannot comprehend how they do that. Like the bandwidth required, they'll be like, oh, I get up at 4 a.m. and then I write until my kids get up for school. And it's like, that's insane. Like that is insane. But there is definitely a lot more pressure on women to have to juggle all of these things and, you know, just how it is. But then you look at it, it makes me really proud though that, as a romance writer, that there's this pocket of the literary industry, the most financially successful pocket of the industry that is predominantly women and writing for other women, and I think that's very cool. So that they'll do it if they want to do it, they'll find the time. You find the time for your passions, and I admire those women.
Yeah, I think back because I really do fit my time, fit the time to do my writing today. But
Mm.
back when I was young, I had 3 children under the age of, let me see, like 6.
5?
Is Chrissy 6 years
Well,
older than you or 5?
4 years older than me.
Oh, well, there you go. Under 5 years old. And I had a husband that couldn't hold a job, and so I had to, and then I had to come home and take care of the kids and do the, and what he did when he went out, I have no idea, but I was there, and so writing was, even though I loved writing and I wanted to be a writer, I didn't make that time to do that. And back then, in in the 1970s, you could still submit your writings directly to the publisher. You didn't need an agent.
Mm.
And that could have happened, but I was too focused on trying to stay sane and keep my kids fed, and at the time the position I had with the company was very unstable. And I actually got laid off from my company at one point. And then
Mm.
when they lay people off, they try to find them positions elsewhere in the company. And that's what they did, and that's where I'm at today. Not only the stress of being the main breadwinner, but having 3 small children, and then not sure if you were going to have a job the next day. So it's pretty stressful. So
Yeah.
like you said, women who can do all of that, wow, man, that's great.
I have a friend who I love talking to her. We met through our publisher, Macmillan, but we didn't really talk when we were both still with Macmillan. She reached out to me about it, like a year and a half ago, because she found out that I was self-publishing and she wanted to do it too. And we've become very close since then. And she has a newborn and thyroid cancer and a full-time job and will still text me and go, "Oh, I wrote today. I finished the book. I did this, and I'm putting this out." And it's so crazy. I truly admire how much positivity and stamina she has. It makes me feel like I'm like, when I'm having those bad days and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. Like, how will the books that are going to get done, whatever. And I'm like, what in the world am I complaining about? Like, I have all this time. And of course I don't, I have 3 jobs, but it's still just, I don't have a newborn as well as, I think she's got 3 other kids on top of having a newborn. And so it's crazy. If there's a will, there's a way.
Yes. Well, the good thing is that we didn't have too many people that passed away in November that were part of our Remembering Remarkable Lives. Of course, when you go to Wikipedia, you can always find not everybody in the world, but everybody of well-known people, from serial killers to, foreign dignitaries to scientists and things like that. And I have tried when looking at the scientists, because there are a lot of things that they do, and I go, I want to know what they did that has impacted the world, not just physics or just biology. I want to know what that has done, like, who is who's a guy that who invented the pacemaker. I want to know who he was, or what these people did. So I do try to find anyone who has made a major impact in the world today, either by their lives or by their deaths. So, well, that's all we have. All right. Well, do you have anything else before we sign off? Well, we hope everybody has or had a Merry Christmas if this doesn't get published or get put out until the end of the year. And I hope you have a Happy New Year. We will continue this in 2026. And Vicky's talking about doing her own podcast. You want to do a plug for that?
I mean, we haven't, it's not all still lots of moving parts, but we're going to be doing a podcast about adaptations, about film adaptations. And so we're going to have a little book club. We're going to read a book. We're going to watch a movie. We're going to discuss, why do we think it was a successful adaptation? I think it'll be a lot of fun. We like to read books together. We like to watch movies together. So it just seems only natural that we should find a way to talk about it.
Right. Yes, definitely. All right. So we'll keep you updated on that when that comes out. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the year. We look forward to 2026. We are 4 short years away from 2030.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy? All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next month when I would say we hope we don't have anything to talk about, but we have a lot to talk about next month. Sadly,
Okay.
a lot.
Already. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we'll talk to you later. Bye.